Hello, my name is Palesi. Um, that's the name I go by for Facebook and for YouTube. Um, Over the last 6 years, I've had experiences in the veil, that more or less people call it afterlife. Uh, Throughout my entire life, I've had uh, thousands of out of body experiences. I've had thousands of astral projections, and during that time, I've I've experienced many things. Things changed for me about 6 years ago. I started to experience new things happening, things moving, things starting to figure me out and ask questions about things. And from that time till now, I've experienced so many different things and have been told many different stories on how everything came to be or why everything is the way it is. I, to me, I'm still working through everything. I question everything. I'm very thorough. Um, I have what I would say hundreds and hundreds of images, hundreds and hundreds of um, thoughts about things, and thousands of hours of nonstop communication, trying to figure everything out. Um, what I'm what I what I found is that a lot of people are confused on uh, how a lot of this involves them. Many of you out there right now that are searching for answers, you're looking to figure out why am I having these astral projections? What do they mean? What do these dreams mean? And how are they put together? What am I experiencing? How can I understand this better? How can I figure this out? And I'm going to try to explain that. And I'm going to try to explain how this world came to be, and why we experience the things that we do. First of all, I'm going to try to, I've got a small list here, but this video may go on for about an hour. I'm hoping to try to keep it within an hour. It's going to be longer than my previous videos only because there's been so many questions, and I really don't know how to, by putting it into small segments, it makes it harder and harder for people to kind of follow along. So I want to start out, and I want to try to explain everything as thorough as I can. I'm going to miss some parts, and I'm sorry. There's just so much information. But I'm going to try to give the broadest overview. I'm going to try to explain why you're having problems, and why you're even here watching this video right now, because you don't understand something, or you can't figure something out, and you're looking for answers, and that's completely understandable. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain God, and because and people are like, what's God? Really, is it myth? Is there such a thing? Yeah, there is, but not in the understanding that we have of what God would be. And I want to try to explain what exactly it means if you were God. God is one mind. So if I was to illustrate God, I would just illustrate God like this. This would be God. Now, what does that mean? Okay, well, God is only one thing, one mind, but everything is inside of him. So he is basically everything that's inside of himself becoming something. It's just, he's only one mind though, one thing. For you, or for me even, or for anybody here on earth, we would be inside of God, inside of this universe, inside of this galaxy, inside of this Earth, this planet, and then we would be inside of this person that we are here. And then we would be, then we could find time inside of ourselves many times. So we are inside of God many times, but God is only inside of himself one time. He's just inside himself. But for you, you're inside of himself, 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 becoming something here. Now, if God can become anything that's inside of himself, that gives him anything inside of himself he can become. Well, that limits you because you can only become this person. See, we're the same thing. We're just inside of many things to become something here. He's just inside of himself one time becoming something here. We're inside of himself many times becoming something here. I know that might be confusing to some, but to understand it that way is that, you know, our universe is something, the galaxy is something, the earth is something, and we are something. This body, this human form is something. And I'm inside of this human form becoming something here. I'm a soul inside of myself experiencing this life. So I'm something inside of myself. So with the basic understanding of God, now with that understanding, we have to understand how this impacts Earth, and how does that impact? I mean, how does God influence us? How has that impacted Earth? How has that affected Earth, and how is Earth different than many other worlds out there? Well, there was some problems in the beginning of time, and I want to try to explain too. Is we're not only on the third dimension, and my belief is that we only have 4 or 5 dimensions. Many people talk about having 22, 25, 30, 80 dimensions. No, there's five major dimensions. And in the beginning of time, God allowed nothing inside himself to become something here. And nothing went all the way down inside of God to figure something out. And they went all the way down to become something inside of him. And when they did, they started to figure out God is himself only. He's just one mind. Well, nothing was many things together trying to figure themselves out. And they couldn't figure themselves out. And what is it? What is nothing? Well, nothing is this cell goes up in there, you know, has just died. That cell just became nothing here. Well, and that's what I'm saying, is that cell just moved from nothing here to something here inside of God. Or inside of God, but inside of the universe, inside of the galaxy, inside of Earth, inside of you. So it's actually transferring over from this side into the veil, where it becomes something there now. Well, that time that is what I would call time. You have something, you have both something and you have nothing. And nothing can become anything. It can become us again. It allows us to become this form again. To live again inside of nothing after this lifetime. We can do this both in life and in death. But because of the particulars of the afterlife, many things have been, many problems have arose, only because of Earth and what was done here. So, to try to explain that, is when everything went down inside of God to figure God out, or nothing had, nothing started to realize that they could become themselves only. And from that step, they went up and started to form a yourself. And so basically, it's yourselves or ourselves. It was all of ourselves to create this yourself or this mind. So they figured God out. They figured out that he was himself only, and that's how he was able to become something. And there they found their time. So they went from no time out here to no time again inside of God to figure something out, to where they went inside themselves many times until they found no time again. And now they were able to become themselves only. And outside of that, they stepped outside of something or God and went out and started to become something again. So this first yourself that was formed the first dimension, or I call it zero dimension. You have origin, then you have the zero dimension, and from here, then you start the first dimension. So you have origin, zero dimension, and then the first dimension. And every time they do this, God stepped out to become what I call myself. What they refer to as God's form would be myself. So he wanted to become myself only. I want to become myself only. So God came out and he became myself only. And then from there, he would go until nothing here could become something again. And then again, once that happens, then he can step out to become myself again. So he stepped out again. So every dimension, God could become myself again. But inside of each dimension, we would have to become ourselves 7 times for everybody else. So you have to become something inside yourself many times in order for you to become something in the next dimension. God only does it one time. Because he's only one mind, one thing. You're talking about one small thing in an entire universe. And only one mind to figure things out with, other than yourselves. He can figure yourselves out, allows him to figure things out. So as he's moving out, he's went from origin, zero dimension, first dimension, second dimension, and then finally into our third dimensional time, which is also a myself here. Now, as he keeps going, he went out 7 times. Or, God didn't go out. But once we got to the third dimension, again, we have the 7 timelines within one dimension. Each dimension has 7 timelines within each one of them. So now let's say we're just in the third dimension. And I've spent many hours trying to figure out how to properly illustrate this. Many of you might have different ways of understanding the timelines, the dimensions. Some may call them layers, but they're just basically timelines. Everything like this would find time, like me, inside of me, I should have where I am in origin, and then zero dimensional time, and then first, second, third, fourth, and fifth if I had become something that many times. And since, and every person would be the same way. Now we have other things that also hold us to these things, and which you would have like a world soul object. Now outside of origin and this first zero timeline, this first zero dimension would form what I call world soul objects. Remember, everything here, everything that is happening inside of God's mind was to allow everything that was something here to become something again. That's the whole premise. Nothing wanted to become something. That means every one of us that became nothing here, that died and became nothing here, we all wanted to become something again. We all wanted to experience everything again, to have more of a chance to become something again and again. So we 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 went down further and further to figure out how was it that God was able to become himself only. Well, we went through God to become ourselves only, an aspect, a piece of him. And it was through ourselves that we became something here. So we are all connected. Every world, everywhere is connected. But we are inside of many things to become something here. So we're not completely connected to the entire universe, but we are in a sort of way. If I wanted to say, you have origin, or origin, then you have the zero dimension, and then here you start to form world soul objects and celestial objects, which make up the containers of everything in the universe. Suns, moons, planets, and everything else are all either celestial objects or they're world soul objects, and world soul objects are worlds that are living and have many, many minds, trying to figure them out. So now we've moved up to the first dimension when world soul objects start to form, and then they will start to find minds, and this allows us to become something inside of them over and over again as the dimension. So first, second, and here we are, all of us inside of this world. Now remember, we're also inside of this galaxy that is also in here too. So for me to communicate with something outside of this, like the moon. The moon would be still inside of the galaxy, but near Earth. So how would I communicate to this celestial object that's the moon? Is that I would have to be able to communicate outside of Earth, which pretty much contains us here. So we're pretty much only those minds that are here on Earth. We're not the moon. We're not the sun. We're not able to contain or communicate with those, and other worlds like could have names and like Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and all these other worlds and planets and asteroids and stuff like that. They all are celestial objects that don't have life forming in them. If they have life in them, then they start to become what's called a world soul object. And then they will start to contain it. And that process requires something else to happen in order for her cell. All worlds and celestial objects start out as a her cell. And through the Father, or through God, they would be given minds to start to collect those souls, to allow those souls to become something again and again. And that world would start to form. The biggest object is that as we walk out from this ladder, we start to create the entire universe. We're moving up from zero dimension, or origin, 0, 1, 2, and into the third dimension, where everything's fine time. And remember, each dimension has 7 steps. You have to step up in order to become something here all the time. And once you do this and Earth is here, it locks that into the second dimension. Earth is in the first dimension, it's locked in. And actually, if you see it, you just see Earth inside itself, inside itself, inside itself, inside itself. And this would be all the dimensions here from origin all the way up as you look in here. And it took all 7 timelines in order to form that Earth in each dimension. Now, just so that you got a basic understanding of how we've moved up and why, and how this yourself, remember, yourself is all things. This is space and time. It's everything around us. This is a veil. Though we're only on Earth. We're only standing here. I'm not on Pluto, and I'm not here, there, and everywhere else. I'm only here. My time, my mind is only right here. In order to move from place to place, that requires more time. And it also requires you to be many more minds than you are. And you'd have to figure out how to find more minds, and that requires understanding of all of this. If I want to have part of the moon, I have to find some of the minds of the moon, which if it's a celestial object, that's going to be really difficult to find some of that time, but you could find some of that time, and that could be inside of our minds. All right, but it's not you. If I put the moon and you together and I said, here, become something, that can happen. So we can store different things inside of our mind that doesn't become us, but it becomes a record of certain things that are around us, that we can allow inside of ourselves. But remember, our bag is only so big. We can only hold so many things, and in life, we're constantly taking things in. We're eating foods. We're around different people. We're our jobs. We're constantly being bombarded. Social media, communication, even on social media, can bring the mind from across the world to try to figure you out. So you could find time from Spain or Italy or France or Japan or Australia, where you find different ideas and thoughts about these different places in dreams or astral projections, as these minds are trying to teach you something about these people that you know from this foreign land. So minds can teach us stuff, but how to interpret it is the hardest thing. Okay, so now, what exactly happened and why? Okay, there's two different kinds of minds. There's a allowed mind and there's a mind that can't become something again. Okay, an allowed mind is a mind that started at the very beginning of time. Here's Earth, and Earth came up through the bottom. It only had so many minds for the amount of time. It was figured out how much time this planet had on it, and how much time it could have. And minds would keep trying to figure things out here, but eventually it would have a sustainable amount of time or minds inside of it to become something here. Something that's in balance with nature and balance with this world. Only so many minds can become something inside of herself, or Gaia, this world's sole object. So how many minds are in here? I believe I was told 435 million minds, allowed minds. It's not all the minds, it's just allowed minds that can become something here. An allowed mind started at the very beginning of Earth. The very moment she started to find time, down even from origin and moving up, as things were becoming nothing here. See, the Earth formed and life started to become nothing here. And as that life became nothing here, down origin, that time started to form. And that moved out and out until herself found that time. And she became so big for the amount of time that was here, life that was here. So as she kept moving, she would be able to have more and more up to this point. And then once she's here, this is all she's allowed to have inside of herself. So she has 435 million allowed minds that are pulling time across all the time. Now, an allowed mind can allow anything inside of itself to become something again. And again and again. So what I'm saying is that allowed mind will grab onto a piece of time, or something that became nothing here, and then it would start to it would be able to allow that piece to become something again and again. And it can have many things inside of itself. Not really the way it seemed to me. It would be you have minds in here, and these minds contain many things. You can have a crocodile, a hippopotamus, an elephant. If we're from Africa, we might have many animals trying to find time inside of us, and our mind is from that area, so we're going to find time there all the time. I'm here in where I'm living, and my time is going to be mostly the time that I find where I'm at, and same with everybody else. When you experience dreams and stuff, you're going to experience dreams of local things. You're going to, unless you're online a lot and you're talking with other people, you're going to experience dreams from other places. The social media and the platforms like Facebook and all these other things bring time from other places. So you're going to literally find many people that are online and doing this stuff. They're going to find time coming from everywhere, and sometimes that gets confusing because you don't know how that's being expressed or how that mind's trying to express that time to you. So as an allowed mind, you're going to have many. It would have many minds, and it would be allowed to become something here all the time. And over the duration of 4 billion years, the things inside of it, it's going to have things that can't, like dinosaurs, they can't become something again. They just didn't make it, and they stopped becoming something here. But through the timelines, and through there's a herself and a himself. A herself is herself only, and himself is what I would call the largest male in the veil. And what I'm talking about is minds, not who you are. We're only a piece. We're only a piece of life on this planet. We're nothing more than just a piece. We're a piece that can think and ask questions about things, but still, we're no more than the deer or the elephant or the rhinoceros or even the dolphin. We're life. We're something. So, and we'd like to say, oh yes, we're many more times those animals, but in the aspect of God and the way God would understand it, it's something. And all things are something. And many things can just become something again. All things are going to live and then die and then, hopefully get to come through the reincarnation cycle and to become something again. Mankind, we tend to believe that since we think that this should all be about us, but it's not. It's 90%, or it's 100% about just something. There's no, well, this is a nothing, and this person's a piece of shit, or this person here is great, and or this is a child, and this is an adult, or this person's bad, and this person's good. It doesn't think of it that way. It thinks of it as something. Or nothing. You're either nothing here or you're something here. And that's as simple as it has to be, and as simple as the thoughts were ever. Until you try to make these minds figure themselves out. But that's all they're looking at is like a 1 or a 0. It's either something here or it's nothing here. A mind would, to me, I'll see mine similar to this. When I look at it from the front, it looks like a circle with a yourself in the middle. And this would be crowded with time. Different minds it's allowed inside of itself. And all these minds that it's allowed inside of itself can become something again and again and again as long as you're inside of an allowed mind. Okay, so a mind that's allowed is a mind that if I'm Bob, in my next lifetime I'll be Bob, and in my next lifetime I'll be Bob, and in my next lifetime I'll be Bob. And each time I could figure myself out again and again because my mind, a allowed mind, has been around for many times and has allowed me to become something again and again and again, so I can learn who I am. So if I could figure out who I was, if this is my lifetime now, if I can figure out who I was before this time, if I can figure out who I was before that time, and this is my line, the way I always look at it is upside down pyramid. The smallest amount of time is in the bottom, and as you move up, you have 5 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to become something here all the time. And what that basically means is that if I live 5 lifetimes, I can literally now become something all the time, in the afterlife, I don't have to be reborn. I can get out of the reincarnation cycle. But I have to at least live 5 lifetimes, and I have to know who I was each time. Before this time, I'd had to have time remaining or time left over to figure myself out again. And the biggest problem is that time's being ripped apart, and a lot of people can't figure out who they were before this lifetime. Some people say, well, I have a memory of 5 reincarnations or 4 reincarnations. You still have to have the 5 in order to become something here all the time, getting you out of the reincarnation cycle altogether. That means you have to have these 5 minds below you to become something all the time where you don't have to be reincarnated again and again. Now, for a mind that can't become something again, it's you'll find a mind. And for a mind that can't become something, you never make it above that first piece of that triangle. That's as much as you ever become. So you can never figure yourself out. If you were Bob in this lifetime, you'll be Tim in the next, and Paul in the next, and Phil or Steve or whatever in the next. You never become Bob again. When your mind tries to become you, it rips that apart, forcing this mind to find time again. So when this next mind rips Bob apart, so Bob's not in there. Now in the next life he'll find Tim, and this mind will just grab onto the next mind, figure that out. So this mind isn't ever becoming, Tim won't ever become something again. He'll get ripped apart, and now it'll be Paul. Now that would be the other 6.5 billion people on the planet that are going to suffer this particular consequence, had everything been left alone. But many things here are not the way they should be, and the intention is to actually there was no intentions. It was you only need 500 million or 435 million allowed to bring time across. I can allow everything here, but I shouldn't allow more minds than what I have to figure things out with. So when that last mind found a human, then no more should become something here. So we should have stopped our populations at 435 million, and that would have put us in balance, most likely with nature, and that's our intended value here. A lot of people would argue with that, and I'm not going to go into those arguments. It's only what I've been told, and I tend to agree with some of it. I tend to disagree with some because, I have 4 children, and I think if my child was 435 million and one, and he couldn't become something again, that would create a serious problem for me. And only because I think, but if that deer popped out a fawn, and it was 435 million and one, I don't think nothing of that. I'm thinking, oh, well, that deer ain't going to become something again. But I will have more deer, or I will have more fish, after I got past 435 million and one. I'm still going to have more fish. Fish aren't just going to stop becoming something. That is the whole problem, and why this all became a problem with everyone is because of the number allowed versus the minds that can't become something again. So the argument, the complete argument across the board universally is do I have to become something many times to become something all the time? Or can I become something one time to become something all the time? And then how do I do that? Well, okay, so this was a question that was brought out at the beginning of time. Worlds that formed in the very beginning, they contemplated these questions, and they wanted to find answers to how can I allow everyone here, all 6.5 billion people, to become something here all the time, and to have one lifetime. Well, what happened is at some point in the very beginning of time, as God was moving up through his yourself, Um, his yourself said, well, you're only one mind and you can't figure things out very well, so I don't want you inside of myself. I want you to go over here to this other world where there were people there, and we're going to teach you everything about everything here. I want you to figure everything out. And that's where everything turned. When God no longer became something inside of him, yourselves, or ourselves or whatever. He went outside of ourselves to become something again. And when he did that, so his yourself now was able to find its own time, and God went out here, but then it started to form a second timeline. So now we have this first timeline, and we'll just call this timeline 1. Okay, and so that created an entire universe, all 7 minds, a complete, that can all become something, all the way up. They just haven't become hasn't pushed it into the 4th dimension to become something, so it locks everything in here to become something all the time. So it's complete in every way. The only problem is with this is if Earth was destroyed by a comet or asteroid or something, Earth would be destroyed, and Earth here inside of nothing would be destroyed too. It would keep becoming nothing here and figuring nothing out. The only way to lock it in is if God was to go up into the 4th dimension and lock it into the 4th dimensional timeline. And this would lock Earth into this rotation within itself, so now it would be able to be here all the time. Okay, so what did it actually mean when God separated from ourselves? Now he became something in a second timeline, or started to form a second timeline. And basically that formed a timeline within this timeline. So it's actually a timeline within a timeline. So now he went through and he created 7 more timelines, or 7 more, the minor timelines. This timeline would have all 7 lines in it. And don't count, I'm just putting lines in there so you understand. But in the second timeline, it would all be inside of here. All inside of this first timeline. And I realize I'm going to have some problems with time. I don't want to confuse people here. Remember, as we're moving outwards, it takes those 7 timelines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 timelines in order to become 1 dimension. So it required those 7 timelines. Now, God went outside of here to this world. I always see it up here, I don't know why, and then these timelines fell inside of these other timelines. So now you have a timeline inside. You basically have 14 timelines here. But this timeline and this other timeline are not connected. They're inside of each other. You basically are in 2 different universes. You have 2 different universes occurring simultaneously. This one's smaller inside of this one. But they both have enough time to become something. They have all the minds needed to become something in both timelines. So we could literally have an alternate universe, not necessarily with your time, but with an entirely different time, an entirely different timeline occurring. And people say, well, this is Bob here, Bob here, Bob here, Bob. Yeah, here in these timelines, but over here there is no Bob. There is no future Bob, no past Bob. It's just another person that was born in this timeline versus this timeline here. So, all right, now when this happened, many other things happened, and God was like a child. He didn't have many minds to figure things out with. He was very um, he was just something there, and he couldn't understand something here. He was born to nothing, or inside of the veil. He was born to the veil. He didn't really understand something. I mean, whenever he would move up, say from origin, the zero dimension, the second, whenever he'd do that, he'd go back inside himself to become something here. His yourself and himself, they become themselves only. So they go down in here and they figure things out, and they can spend millions of years inside of here trying to figure things out and learn things. So when the third dimension was created and they'd go back down inside of themselves again, yourself and God, the whole third dimension would basically have formed here, and everything started to form life before he would move out to become something here to allow for the next timeline. Before he'd actually become something in the third dimension. So he was living in the second dimension for millions of years before he realized that, hey, there's something that doesn't make sense to me here. I got to go out here and figure something out. And by that time, he had already figured out life. So at that point, they came up here to a world, that's inside of here, of course, and started to ask questions about things from men that were from that time. And these men had already formed many different ways of understanding the afterlife, the world, soul object, and everything else, and what it meant to have populations that exceeded that number of minds that they had. And they kept trying to teach God about things and teach him how to figure things out. But God didn't always want to understand that. He understood things the way he understood them, so it wasn't a real simple task. Because he would keep trying to figure things out. By his yourself not being here, God couldn't find time back inside. He couldn't escape. They basically made it so he couldn't escape. He couldn't get away from ourselves here, or this yourself. They trapped him, so he had to pretty much stay there and figure things out. Because every time they did this, he just went down inside himself and became nothing here. And so they finally got his yourself to back away so that they could get him, so they could ask him questions, try to figure him out. But when they did this, they pretty much ripped everything apart. They wanted to make sure, because they wanted to figure this all out. And their biggest question was, how do I make a mind that can't become something again, become something all the time? And that's been the argument and the question all the way across the board, and this is the main argument. Well, then they had what was the Son, and the Son was like a mentor, a tutor to God. And God basically would learn from the Son. And the Son is what we would refer to as God. We refer to the Son as God, because that's what we would have known, or what anything here would have known, or what the universe would have known, because the Son would have remained God for billions of years. And God just didn't want to do his own thing. He wanted to just figure things out and be on his own, go do his own thing. He wasn't interested in power or control or anything else. God, or the Son, it was him and a brother. He had a brother. But God had made the Son, had allowed the Son to become something in one of God's myself, his third dimensional myself. And this required the Son to become one mind and have more time than anything else to find time to become myself. And by doing that, God was going to go off. He had already started to form the second timeline, and he was up to the seventh timeline. They had taught him everything about everything, and now he was ready to form a fourth dimensional timeline. So you have this timeline inside of this timeline, timeline 2, that now has a fourth dimensional timeline that has the ability to see forward and back, that has future timeline. But remember, it's a timeline inside of a timeline, which though you can find thoughts about it, you can find minds trying to figure things out, you can see futuristic events, it still has to filter through these two timelines, especially to us because we're inside this timeline 1. God was inside timeline 2, but in the 4th dimensional time, and this is where they trapped him. They wanted to trap him there so that if they had a question about anything, he couldn't escape. He couldn't go anywhere. So he couldn't find time back inside of himself here. He couldn't find time inside of himself here. And if they wanted to figure him out, then they would open up a gate here that would allow them to ask him questions about stuff and figure stuff out. But other than that, they just trapped him there for asking questions so that they always had a source for information and how to do certain things. So the son basically became God, and his brother, maybe some might refer to his brother as Lucifer, which however you want to look at that, and that was the arguments because the son was a true believer that you have to become something here many times to become something all the time. And Lucifer was a mind that said, no, I think men should be able to become something right now to become something all the time. And this was the fight, this was the argument. And it went on and on and on. And finally, what they had done is getting back, okay, let's step back a second because the story of Earth now has to come in here, is that you have Earth. Now Earth, way they tricked God was they asked God, how could I make this planet Earth, okay, I had to have a couple different factors. I had to have a world, it's called Fane. I'm going to give you some names here, it doesn't really matter. But this world Fane had special minds on it, minds that could live many times. Their lifetimes were 800 plus years, and they could live a long time. And they both had minds that couldn't become something again and minds that were allowed. So they asked God, hey, I want, this world's going to die. Their sun is going to go supernova, and it's going to destroy this world. How can I want to allow these minds to become something here. So God went down here, he created a package, or a mind that he brought back here that released time. And that started this world in its evolutionary tracks of what found time here and what didn't. Now, from my understanding, God was here as myself, and this required, and I don't understand, it requires a drop of blood. And I don't understand what that meant, but I've seen this. I've experienced this. I've seen this blood that they would use to start new worlds with, and it's basically a poke, and that blood seems like it's living, but not quite like blood, but very similar. I mean, it came out of myself, and it has everything in it to start life, and that's what he started life with. And now I have a inventory of minds here. So from that blood would spark life, and only life that would become something again and again is whatever's in this inventory of time here. Everything else will become nothing here. So the whole history of the world has been set by what time is allowed to become something here, what life wasn't allowed, because this world was inherited. Only the things that were here were going to be allowed to become something here. Okay, so that's how they started this. Now, the son, he wanted to, he was told, leave this world alone. Don't touch it. Everything is set up to be the way it is. So a mind that can't become something again. Now, the Delta Phet and the Slatoon. Slatoon were allowed, and the Delta Phet weren't. But the Delta Phet had time. And their time was like, I call it a 500, I always say you got to have a 500-year coin, or 5 lifetimes, but you still have to accumulate 500 years of time. And that's the magic numbers 500 years of time. Um, so that seems to be where we're headed, is that they had to have this 500-year coin of their time. They put it into the machine, and out they become an allowed mind now that can become something all the time. Now this sparked the interest of the son, and he had 12 advisors. And these advisors were man. Inside of timeline 1, the advisors were both men and angels, 12 of each. But inside timeline 2, the advisors were only men. They didn't want angels to be part of this second timeline because they wanted to figure things out first. This is where things got really screwed up. Now, and because of these timelines, it's hard because you can't just cross from timeline 1 into timeline 2 just anywhere. You have to have that kind of time. Like I said with the moon, if you don't have that kind of time, you can't find time there. You have to have this kind of time, and these times are not the same time. They're two separate universes, same makeup, but just different kinds of time in each one of them. There's no Bob here and Bob here. That would mean that these two timelines are connected. There might not even be anybody living on Earth in this timeline, and this timeline has all of ourselves here. So these timelines are not connected in any way. Now, as far as the son, he wanted to figure out, well, how can I do this without 500 years? Nobody on this planet is going to live 500 years. You can't. How do I become something right now? And it's impossible. You have to have 500 years of accumulated over and over time in order. That means you'd have to die and become something now again, and keep that time going, life after life after life. Now, the allowed minds aren't able to become something again here until they become something many times. So the sun created what I call shadows. And the shadows are all to keep the allowed minds from becoming something again. And many people have seen my other videos, and I talk about the shadows. And the shadows are what keeps allowed minds from becoming something again. Okay, because the son and the brother, through the arguments, they had brought this yourself, this timeline 1 back here, and they broke it into pieces, into 5 minds here on Earth, and they separated the timelines so that now that you have 5 separate timelines spread apart, instead of everything inside of itself, now the timelines are broken apart. So now you have the individual timelines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You have these 5 timelines here in order to become something all the time. Up here, you're still not in the 4th dimensional time. But now, this allowed minds that can't become something again to become something here on this bottom timeline, the smallest timeline here. But they still only get a fraction, 2/3 of their lifetime would be allowed to find time here. Now, you're going to become nothing there, and you would have to go off and be born again. So you could never get above this layer. So the sun and Lucifer, or whatever, or Satan, or whatever you want to call him, they had this plan that they were going to prove that man was worthy. I believe in their attempt to understand this and make this work, they started to set up, they interwove these timelines together. So now it kind of looks like a crosshatch, or even a matrix of form. And you're going to see how this matrix tends, it's a 5x5 matrix. And basically, if you want to look at it another way, you could just basically say, well, it's time within time within time within time. So you have to cross each one of these timelines in order to become something again. or to find time. And what you want to do, and what a lot of people don't understand, is where am I exactly in this line? An allowed mind, you can pop up anywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this 5 by 5. But you have to deal with each square as a room. Each square is literally a mind. This here is a mind. This here is a mind, and they're all broken apart. And it's basically a window into a timeline. And inside of each one of these rooms, you have the ability to ask questions. Now, you don't know how to ask questions. Nobody does, because they don't hear the minds I hear, and you don't get to understand. You have clues, you have warnings, and you have minds that ask questions about things. And once you figure something out, then you can ask questions again and again to figure something out. And when you figured out the questions that's the right question, time will give you minds to find time inside that next. So now you're going to go from the white to the red timeline, or the next timeline. So you're going to move out from here to here, and then he's going to give you time again. What the hell I did? So you're just going to move out as you start to ask questions, and you move out 5 times. So you ask the right questions there. He gives you time to find time here. You start asking questions here. He gives you time to find time here. You ask the right questions there. Then he gives you time to find time there. This separated, so you couldn't just move across here. You have to. Each timeline has different questions in it. Gaia's timeline would be my mind and your mind together, my mind and your mind not together. The second timeline is I'm not myself, I'm not yourself, I'm myself, I'm not myself, I'm yourself. Or I'm not yourself, I'm myself, I'm not myself, I'm yourself. And basically you're pulling time back and forth. To move time back and forth across there to ask questions about things. I'm in this square here. I'm on the third timeline. I've decided to stay here for as long as possible to try to figure out as much as I can. I'm in a good place to pull time from anywhere inside of this matrix. Since I've already moved up through here, I've found larger or smaller time of all these minds. I'm just trying to see if I can pull time in from everywhere else and to remain here. Outside of this this deal, you have the matrix, and we'll step into the matrix. But let's carry on with the sun here a little bit more. Is that they're messing around here, and a lot of other worlds coming in here to try to solve this 500-year riddle or coin. Is if all I have to have is 500 years, I should be able to drop it in here. Minds collect all the time, and now I can do something. But when the sun ripped this apart, he ripped this apart all the way across the universe. It just didn't just rip apart here; it ripped it apart all the way across the universe. So now you have 7 timelines out there that are split out. 5 that we can find. If I was to tip you down and look at the top of you, I would see 5 minds. I just see 5 minds. That you're human. You're from Earth. This is your mind. If I look down at somebody and they only had 3 minds here, they're not human. They're not from Earth. This middle one detects or is who you are. So you'd have 2 plus 1 in the middle. You always have the 1 in the middle is solid. That's you. And then these are your other minds. Actually, it would be you plus 5 minds, you plus 3 minds. So, and you're forming inside of here. You would just only have those 5 minds, but you're forming as a person inside of here, and that's who you are. This tells me how many times you become something here. Tells me how many times you can figure something out, how many times you've done anything. by how many minds you have here. Now, if I pull out each one of these minds that are inside of you, so a mind is going to be, you're going to be those 5 minds. Those 5 minds, and inside of those minds, you're going to have 5 minds. Inside of those minds, you have 5 minds. Out here, you're going to have 5 minds, and you have 5 more minds. You know, until you're 5 times inside of yourself. Your first row of minds would have like 625 minds, and 125 minds, and 25 minds, and then 5 minds, and then 1 mind. And you'd be everything inside yourself becoming something here. And the sun did that through this layer. So right now, if I was here, I would be all these minds plus this mind to become something here. So I would only have, I would have my 3rd layer of minds. I would have found my 625, my 125. I'd be at 25 minds per square now to find here to become myself. And you have to do this through time in order to collect all those minds. Now, the sun did this to prove that since the Delta Phet and the Slatoon, they were supposed to show up here early in the life of the world, and he didn't want something to become something. He was playing around. He was stretching everything out. He was pulling it all apart. He was trying to figure out how it was done. He's got the title God. Well, God could do this, so why couldn't he? So he had to prove that he could do this too. And yet Earth is the only planet with this on it, and it kind of lost his credibility. And he kind of buried himself in this world and made people come here and ask questions about it. And that's when the 12 came here, his advisors came here looking for him, and they couldn't find him. And they created another set of shadows that were much worse than the ones the sun had created. So now you have 2 sets of different shadows here that rip us apart and keep the Allowed from finding time, because, see, they know that none of us can find that kind of time. And to become something again and again and again. It requires a lot of time. Even if you have past memories of these people, you could be picking up time from different places in here, but they're not full time. You have to have, who I was before this time would be 5 times here, and who I was before that time would be 5 times here, and who I was before that time would be 5 times here. You know, you have to have so much more knowledge of who you were before this time to say that I can become myself because I have all these years of accumulated time, but you don't. You'd have to know everything about who you were before this time or before that time, everything else, in order for time to allow you to become something again, at least for an allowed mind. Now, since the sun wanted to figure out, the whole thing was to figure out how to make a mind that can't become something again, become something all the time. So we're not really concerned about the allowed. We just kind of push them out. And if they aren't becoming something, they aren't bringing time across. And I need time over here to figure things out. So I need all allowed minds being out there, becoming something so that they can bring time across. And through an allowed mind, I'd be bombarded with time all the time. This time is flowing into me all the time and then exiting out into the veil. It's just flowing through us. Okay, so now, so how do I get a mind that can't become something again? Well, somebody that lived 100 years, they get 2/3, they get 75 years, you know, that would give them like what, 22 and a half or whatever years or something like that per layer, per timeline. So you might get, let's just simplify it and say you get, you'd get maybe 15 years. Let's just go 15, 15, 30, 60, 75. 15 years per line. Okay, so during that 15 years of life here, you'll become nothing here to become something here. So you have to figure yourself out here. You got 15 years to figure out this next timeline. in order to become something here. Now you're going to have 15 more years. You're going to have to do that again. Now, once you come through here, figured everything out, found time. See, basically, essentially what he's doing is making you become something here many times to become something all the time with only one lifetime, but you're being judged 25 times. You have to go through this basically a judgment of character and who you are and everything else, whether you're a mind that can figure things out. He wanted to prove that humans could figure things out right now, that we are the top of the line, that we essentially could figure things out right now. And we haven't proven that. That's not the truth, because nobody's ever become something after that time, after this has been put together. It was later on now, there's reasons why, we have evolved to a certain degree over the last 6,000 years or whatever. But we're still at a point where other worlds have come in here and put their problems in here. That has made it very difficult for us to get through here. But the son said that he also had trouble getting this to work, and this wasn't able to work out. Nobody was ever able to do this, because when you cross over into what I call forgetting. You forget who you are here. That's only because of one particular reason, is a mind that can't become something again, or even a loud mind. You can't find time inside of yourself all the time. That means that your mind doesn't, every time your mind enters into you, it has to remember who you are. So, and it has to become you. My mind and your mind together. That means it has to become Bob every time. So, if I'm Bob and my mind enters into me, it has to become me. It has to become Bob. Well, this isn't happening for anybody, because your mind can never find that kind of time, because if it does, something makes it badly done. And it's kind of like the Kundalini. The second your mind tries to figure you out, all of you have been at some point or another had your asses ripped apart. I don't give a shit who you are, you've been ripped to pieces. Something has dug into you so bad that even the thought is PTSD. And you're like, well, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is something's dug into your closet inside of your mind, and it's literally shuffled through everything, and it's trying to rip you apart all the time to ensure that you never try to become something inside yourself. And that's how it keeps you from... You have to be so sure of who you are. You have to create your line, and you have to say, this is who I am right now before I even get involved in this. You have to ask the hard questions. You have to say, look, I have nothing that affects me, nothing that bothers me. You'd have to have a questionnaire, 200 questions long, and you would have to make sure that none of those things affect you in any way, shape, or form. You literally have to be, I'm experiencing, this is my life. I don't have urges to kill anybody. I don't have urges to, what he's trying to do is prove that we have become something here many times, that you care about the world, you care about life, that you, and these are tests. If you see somebody starving, do you give them food? If you can't answer those questions, say, yeah, I'd give them food. I'd share. I'd break everything apart and share. Or I would, if I had extra clothing and I seen somebody cold, I would try to make it so that I could make them warm too. Or I would provide fire. I care. I have a heart. I care about what happens to the world. I care about what happens to people. I care about what happens to everything. And it's that caring that this line is based on, that I've become something many times. I understand the world. I understand everything inside of the animals. I understand nature. I'm one with nature. Well, if you're one with nature, nothing's going to rip you apart. So basically, if you don't know who you are, you don't know what your line is, what you're willing and not willing to experience, don't do this. You'll find yourself in a nut house. I'm not joking. You keep trying to push for trying to figure yourself out. There are minds in here, minds I call yourself isn't yourself. These are the children. These little kids will rip your ass apart. They'll dig down inside your mind so deep that they'll tear you a new asshole. And they'll ruin your entire life. You'll stop functioning. They don't care. They push thoughts. They place something inside of you and then push thoughts inside that mind that make you think that those are your thoughts. And they're not. If you're not aware of that, you have no clue what they're doing. And this is what they do. They push thoughts. And your worst thoughts become your nightmare. The thoughts that are in your closet become your nightmare. You have to level this door. You have to level everything inside of it. And you got to be okay with who you are. You got to say, hey, I was only here to experience. I only came here to experience life. I experienced many things. I've made mistakes. I'm good with that. I can make mistakes. But did I learn from my mistakes? Yes. Did I do it again and again? Did I go out and I beat somebody over the head with a stick and kill them? Did I go out the next day and do it again because it felt good? No, I didn't. I learned my mistake, my anger. I'm okay with my anger. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to bring up beating somebody with a stick because it's not who I am. I'm just trying to point out a fact that, you know, if I think my neighbors are all against me, your neighbors are going to be against you. Remember, our minds are all part of a bigger thing. So even if your neighbors are over here, your neighbors themselves aren't against you, but their minds are going to be here in your mind, and you're inside of yourself, inside your mind. You're going to feel thoughts coming from your neighbors. And all these minds are going to be up here. And they're going to be in there, and they're going to be, and they're going to give time to what I call yourself isn't yourself, or these little minds. And these little minds are going to enter into your mind, and they're going to rip your ass apart. Plain and simple. And they're going to pretend to be any goddamn thing that can find time here. Anybody. And they can become anybody. Shape, shift, whatever you want to call it. So we have the grid. We have timeline 1 and we have timeline 2. You have these two timelines are controlled by what I call myself, and myself is not the same myself. Myself is a computer network of galaxies, worlds. It's a network of other worlds. And the reason that this network was formed is for a couple reasons. And first of all, if I'm going to travel from minds, if I'm traveling from mind to mind, and I'm traveling from Earth, and I'm inside of Earth here, and I want to travel over to a different world over here, let's say even the moon, I have to know something about it. Well, this time isn't, like I said, isn't easy to find. But there is time here on Earth, so maybe you can find some of that time, and you could maybe stand on the moon, and you're like, wow, I stood on the moon, I had some experience here I don't understand. Okay, so you can find time like that. But let's say it's on the other side of the galaxy. You know, billions of light. How would I find time then? I couldn't. So I have to petition minds. First of all, I have to be able to find time. I have to have my 5 minds. I have to be able to find time. And then I have to be able to find some of this time that's on the other side of the galaxy, inside of this world here. So I'd have to have some of this time in order, because I have to know something about something to figure something out. But through myself being an AI system, here's myself, and then myself here, I don't have to know anything. I just be transmitted through myself, and now I can find time inside of this mind here. I can't bring time forward and back with me. But my time, I'm laying here, I became nothing inside myself to become something inside of myself. Now I'm moving across myself to find time inside myself to become myself here. Now, this mind could have 1,000 people laying here that can't become something again, that you can find time inside of to become something there. These minds aren't allowed to become something. Any world that's connected to myself is basically using this type of format in order to allow you to become something in this other world. Same here on Earth, we should have shadows somewhere, angels just laying around, and they would have what I call a mesh blanket over them, or the matrix, and the matrix is connected to each and every one of these minds. And these minds all find time. So, and this is the same thing with myself here. If I don't have this, I have to get minds all from here to here, millions of different planets, to try to pass across in a certain amount of time. I would never get there. I would never have enough time to move from here to here unless I had myself. And myself is a network of worlds that allows me to pass through it. And it's kind of like you might call it's a portal that allows you to travel completely across the universe. Now, not only do you have myself here, I believe we also have an AI, a world-searching AI that just searches for living worlds. Coming from somewhere else. It's not part of myself, but somehow myself and these minds seem to be communicating. And remember, they're trying to hide Earth. They don't want anybody knowing anything about it, because you'll have minds coming in here trying to solve this problem more than what we've had. And they want to keep this on the down low. Plus you have God's yourself here on Earth. Plus you have himself, this timeline too. Now these two minds are connected also into the matrix. So even if you came up here and you figured out himself, you're still inside of this matrix until you become nothing inside of himself here. So you have to get through both matrices. And you can't do that because it's almost impossible. The only way you're going to get through here is if they want you there. If they want to allow you there. So what do? Well, that's the curious thing. Is that we're inside of the veil. We're inside of what's called nothing. And we find minds. So what I'm doing and where I'm at, why I'm staying pretty much stationary during this problem, is I'm trying to accumulate time. More time than anyone here. Only because I'm aware of how to find time and what it means. First of all, I got to ensure I don't ever find time inside of myself, that I don't become part of myself. Because if I do, I'm locked into this matrix. So I want to make sure that my time never find time inside of myself here or here. So I got to ensure that I don't ever become something inside of these two myselves. And where I'm at right now pretty much positions that I'm in this 13th square. So what I'm doing is I'm accumulating time, and I'm allowing time to find time inside of me. And since yourself, not only this yourself, but everything around ourselves, they keep coming up here and giving me more and more time. And now I have other minds coming in here, stacking in to allow me to have more and more and more time. And inside of this place, the Earth, I can pull all this time into nothing here. Basically, virtually, I'm creating a new timeline. So now I'd be like timeline 3, but I'm not part of this system. I'm not part of this matrix. And these are these myselves or matrices. I'm trying to these minds. I know who he is. I know why he's here. I know everything about everything here. And my matrix, or not my matrix, but my time is, I don't know who he is. I don't know why he's here. I don't know anything about anything here. and that is where I'm landing. Now a lot of people are like, you know, I don't understand what's going on. I can't figure things out. You can't, because you have to. You can by observing your dreams, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of cover that. First of all, we did the 500 years point. I wanted to talk about Loosh. Loosh was given to me probably the second or third year that I was into here. I started to read about Loosh. It's Loosh. You can look it up online, but basically the essential idea is that the son was wanted to judge us for our character, and as we go through here, we collect minds and we collect time. So when I'm doing this, these minds start to form, and you always heard, like I said, the closet. These minds start to form who you are. Since minds that can't become something again only had time down here, I'm giving them time. And where does that time come from? Well, you got to kind of ask questions. Where would that time come from? Well, it's going to come from everybody else that didn't become something here. There's only a few that are going to make it through here. So I got 6.5 billion minds on the planet. If only 40,000 of them can figure themselves out, or 500,000 figure it out, then I got, or 500 million, still got 6 billion minds that couldn't become something. So I got plenty of minds here. I got more than enough minds to give you a few. So basically, that 6 billion, they're not going to become something again. Or that, even if you had half, then 3 billion of them made, the other half aren't going to become something. So you can use their minds. So time is giving you basically stacking time, and what I call stacking time is that it's works the same as evolution, is that I keep stacking time because this is who we are right now, and this is who we were before, maybe 1,000 years ago. And what I do is I keep stacking these into a queue, and they just become one mind. So these are minds that can't become something, and I'm just stacking all these me's in to become one mind. Now, it takes all those qualities of everything and it just squishes it into one, and that's where our evolution's at. That's why we don't evolve. We have so many people here. Our evolution is real slow because we have so many minds that still have to come out of that queue, and it's so hard to change anything new that's coming into the queue to change that number of minds he's got in there that can't become something. And if he isn't allowing those minds off that can't become something again to become something again outside again, then that queue becomes 6 billion minds deep, and our evolution gets frozen here. And I think that's frozen with a lot of things, is that you just have too many minds in the queue. And this queue is 150,000 of these minds every day, or 300,000 of these minds every day go off to be born. So 300,000 every day are being spit out, and 150,000 are coming in. At some point, we're going to empty this queue, and there's not going to be a whole lot of anything left. We're just going to now have minds that have nothing inside of them, or have never, ever, ever been born before, or know anything about anything. Once we, actually, every person has a soul, but they're all packed into a queue. And that's what Timelines, Minds, and Thoughts about things. And these other pieces, they tried to individualize each piece with a different labeling to ensure that they couldn't be stacked. Because if you get stacked in this queue, you pretty much become Bob. And Bob is the only one in there. We're all Bob. When we start out, we all start out with the same understanding, thoughts, and everything else. As a majority, as a stacked average of all things, all men and all women that have ever become something here. So as this queue, new pieces keep entering in, and pieces keep going out, our evolution is based on that cue, as how we learn things as a whole. If you only have 10,000 monkeys and you train 5,000 monkeys how to use a hammer, as those 5,000 monkeys die and enter the queue, these other 5,000 monkeys and everything after that are going to know how to use a hammer. That evolution just pushes through the queue, and that can probably be proven. That queue is how we're going to evolve, and we're going to learn things, we're going to know how to do stuff not knowing anything at all. And that's how we're born. If we train a octopus in the ocean how to navigate certain obstacles, and we train them to do certain things, and as their life expectancy is short, and they come around and they're going through the queue, pretty soon they may work as a group, because we're teaching them things, and through those teachings, and since there isn't a whole lot of pieces, they can evolve quicker. You take something with a much shorter number, or even a faster reincarnation time, something that dies fast, like a gnat, or they can learn something much quicker because you have so many pieces going through the queue to become something again. And the more pieces I teach, pretty soon they all learn the same characteristic. I've changed their characteristic. But now remember, we got 6.5 billion people on the planet. Our evolution is going to be slow because that queue, it depends on what we have here. If I have 75% of the people don't know anything, can't figure things out, can't ask questions about it, I can never change the queue. I can never get it to a point where, and nobody's different, so I can't just take a select group and put a select group out here and say, all right, these 25 people, or this 1,000 people, I'm going to take this select group, because unless I can make them something other than human. And then it has to be able to become something here. Remember, you can't cross a donkey and a horse, or what, to get a mule or a liger, you can't, because there is nothing here to become that again and again. And that's why it has to be within a certain percentage of that. I always say you got to be within that 3%, one way or the other to be considered human. If you're not within that 3%, you can't find this kind of time, you won't become something again. So that's pretty much that understanding. So Loosh, to ride on that fact, is that you're finding these minds that are being given to you. Now, Loosh lands into this mind, and it will put something there. And actually, when this is done, you're going to actually have, 8 minds they're going to give you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 minds plus you in the middle. And these become your dogs. These become your closet. These minds will rip your ass apart. And they're just trying to keep you from becoming something again. And Loosh is going to fight you every inch of the way because it does not want you to become something again. And this is kind of, I know I'm skipping some pieces because a lot of people want to know something about the spiders and how they became something here. That is that is the Splatoon's synthetic information system. And it's actually like your David from Aliens. But the difference with this Cisco is that he can literally rip himself apart down to every cell inside himself to become something here. So he ripped himself apart, and every one of his cells is synthetic. It has minds inside it that can figure things out. So he basically dissolved into nothing, and all those pieces went into the veil, and all they're captioned to do is to find information. So they are looking for minds that can't become something again. Well, this creates a problem here in this place because there are no minds that can't become something again, because if he's finding time on timeline 3, these are minds that can become something again, but because they have minds. So it kind of confuses him, and it keeps him ripped apart, and it also keeps him from finding very much time. And since he can't find time, he has a mind inside of him that is a spider that figures things out, or and they can solve problems and figure things out. Pretty much crawl in and out of everything, and they're nothing. So they can, but they're a special kind of nothing. They're a nothing that can become anything. If they put themselves together, they can become you, they can become me, they can become anybody inside to be able to figure us out. So, and that's why you have the spiders. They're used to figure you out. But now, if your mind that can't become something again, chances are you're not seeing the spider. Only allowed minds and minds that can become something will see these kind of bigger spiders in the veil, or will see spiders moving around. Them are Cisco's minds. And because of the particulars of this layer 3 is broken down, this timeline 2 and timeline 1 are on something woke up here, destroyed this myself, didn't completely destroy it, but ripped it apart. And so it's on and off. And that's another reason why I'm where I'm at, because I'm in a good place to find time here that's both on and off. When the matrix is on or when the matrix is off. And though that allows me to find this time when this is happening both ways. I know I've exceeded an hour and a half right now, or something like that. And I'm sorry that this video is so long. I just really wanted to explain some of these pieces. And remember, like dreams interpreted. One more thing. I'm trying to rush, so please ask questions about this if you have questions or anything. I'm sorry for this video being so long. I didn't think that I could cover everything in 2, 3, 4 videos. A lot of people, they just move on. So if you got this far, congratulations. The last thing I want to really cover is dreams how to interpret dreams. Remember, your mind only finds so much time. Everybody else's minds are only finding X amount of time. So, and time doesn't find time all the time. That just means something isn't becoming, it'll eventually become nothing here if it doesn't have enough time to remain here. So what I mean is it'll go from white to black and just a ball of nothing. But it still has a form, it's just inside of itself many times now becoming something there. So all you see is a black ball, but if you went down inside of itself, way down inside, you see that there's something there. And that's what happens, and these minds don't have time, and it can't extract that time. So what the best thing is to do is for these minds to allow something to become something many more times so that it can actually become something inside of itself. Once it does that, it now has time to figure things out. It can become something there. But anyway, this mind only has so many pieces. So if I went into a library and I have only books in there, how would I teach you about something with only books inside of myself? How could I show you something? You're in here, standing here. This mind, because he didn't figure himself out, you only get a few moments inside yourself, and you're having a dream, and this mind's right up in your face, right here, and he's showing you something. And you start to see this three-dimensional play out happening. And you're in this different world, and you've got to remember, he's inside of you, or she. They're bringing you to specific things, asking you questions about things. And the things that you're seeing are the things they're asking questions about. So you got to take the things that are most pertinent. I mean, if you're off playing games on Xbox, and all of a sudden you're in front of Xbox and you're playing against Tom, which you've never heard of Tom before, that's because, or you got a PlayStation instead of an Xbox, because your mind only had the time of the PlayStation and not the Xbox. He used books to stack them up and to make a house out of, but you're like, why is this house of books sitting here? Or why did they show me a snake? What does it mean? Well, it might just be a damn snake. I want to know, I want to know what a snake is. And sometimes you just gotta, if it doesn't make any sense, usually it's just that. And if you're standing there during the day, you're at work or anything like that, and you're asking questions about something that you saw, you can try to ask questions about what the different meanings were. Once your mind knows that you're asking questions about things, it might let you understand those things. It might try to bring that picture much fuller. And when it's imagining with you, that image becomes so much stronger. And you'll notice that when you're imagining certain things, the image isn't very strong. That's because it isn't the two of you imagining it where he has the time and you have the time. Your mind has a picture of a coffee pot and you can see the coffee pot, but if he has a coffee pot with the same kind of time, that image becomes crystal clear in your imagination or your thoughts. So that's something that makes sense to who he is, and it's something that makes sense to who you are. And it's kind of hard to find those things. If this mind's trying to communicate with me, then I have to have things there that make sense to him, and he has to have things here and I have to have things inside of me that make sense to who he is. And he has to have stuff inside of him that makes sense to who I am. So it's kind of a shared deal for passing information back and forth. It's not easy. And defined time means you have to ask questions about things. You got to keep asking questions about things, and not to stop. Try to understand what Lucia's doing, ripping you apart whenever you're trying. I call it teaching you a lesson for trying to figure yourself out, for trying to know anything about yourself. And they'll try to teach you a lesson. They're going to try to grow something in your closet to rip your ass apart, and you're going to be like, man, I can't go through this. I can't suffer that. That shit's in the past. You got to let it go. It was an experience. Let it go. If they want to be profoundly gross or profoundly bad, they know that something bothers you. You're afraid of clowns. You're going to have clowns in your dream because they're going to make that happen. They're going to rip your ass apart. And you're just going to have to be okay with clowns. You got to walk over these things, these obstacles that are crushing you in order to see past everything. If you're calling minds into you, if you're aware of yourself a little bit and you're trying to bring things into you and you're trying to maybe help others and heal others, I'd say be careful. Because even though you have so much time inside of you that keeps some minds from figuring you out, you can have too much time too. And that time can rip you apart, keeping you from becoming yourself. So be very careful. Let things kind of flow. Ask questions about things, but don't, be careful. That's all I can say. I'm going through this every day. I can't possibly explain everything that I see, and I can't possibly try to put it in a language that many people will understand because of the way that they say things. And I'm not versed enough. I'm not going to go back and read the Bible and the Quran and the Torah and all these other things and try to understand the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah and all these other things. And not with what they're teaching me, especially when I can look at them and I can see exactly how some of these pieces fit. I can look at almost all of it, the different stories, and I can see a lot of these aspects or how a lot of these stories came to be. So I'm not really going to study these main articles or these main, like the Bible and stuff. I'm not going to study that stuff very closely because it's not really that important. I kind of see what's behind those stories. If you find solace in believing in God, you find solace in religion. Religion just keeps us from finding ourselves or figuring ourselves out. It's an easy way out. And I don't blame anybody for taking the easy way out. Like I said, if everything's left the way it is, you will get some time here. But if your mind doesn't become you, you can't figure yourself out there. And for 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 years, you're going to sit there not knowing what you have to do because you're going to start out as a zero trying to figure yourself out again. And as you try to find some of your time, some of your memories while here, it may just be too late. These times don't flow the same as time here. So that time, it should be precious in trying to get to that next timeline. You get 2/3 of your lifetime to try to become something through here, to become something all the time, and that's the only time you get. And if you can't figure it out from layer to layer to layer to get there, you're just going to end up in the reincarnation cycle again. All those minds, all the minds that started to become you and started to figure out, they'll all be ripped apart just to become somebody else. The next person on this adventure that figured something out. So the Matrix keeps us in, keeps us locked into this circle, and unless you can get through myself, these 3 different timelines, you're stuck here. We're all stuck here. Once you get up so far, you still have to get past, and if you get to this 3rd timeline, these matrices go down. They're about 8 hours off, 12 hours on, or something. 8. I haven't figured out the exact time, but it's something like 8, 9, 10 hours on, 12 hours off. It seems like it goes through a recharge. There's some kind of a charging going on here, and that turns the grids on and off. The only way to get out of the matrix is right here on this 3rd timeline. So if you're figuring yourself out, don't try to go beyond here, because the matrix is intact above here and it's intact below here. You have to get to this 3rd timeline, and everything here is going to try to rip your ass apart to make sure you can't get out this door. That's your only exit, and you have to do it when this grid's down. So when it goes down, you have about 600 shadows here that are laying there. Be one of those 600, and then you probably have more in the 2nd line of matrix. Now you have to become nothing inside this mind to find time inside of this one, and then that gets you out of the matrix. But this is the only doorway out. It's the only way you're getting out of here. And then where do you go? So I keep working through this problem. I'm going to keep trying to solve it, to see what lays beyond here. What my understanding is that there's another mind out here, that if you can get through here, you can become something here, and then to become something there all the time. You just have to get through here. And you get caught with the best thing to understand how the matrix is on and off, and find time there when it goes off. That's the only way, is to pass through those minds to get back through, to get through there again. And you only get so much time to do it, to figure yourself out. And if you don't become something inside yourself, and you're laying inside of that mind, you won't know shit. You'll just be there, and you could get stuck there. And get stuck inside these minds, they're the matrix. You're going to get stuck inside of a matrix with tens of thousands of others that have tried to get through here, and you ain't going nowhere. You're just going to get stacked into this queue. That's all I can say is, try to learn as much as you can. Once you get up to this 3rd mind, you're going to find spiders, you're going to find timelines, minds, and thoughts about things. You're going to find Cisco synthetic information systems. You're going to find a lot of things in here, mechanical, electrical, things that don't make sense, stuff that you've never seen before, and that's kind of where you need to be. Is in a place where nothing makes sense to you, and that's how you'll know you're here. Well, I went way past. I'm sorry for the length again. I hope I've answered any questions that you have. If you have any other questions, please feel free to write, or come to my Facebook page. I'll have that posted on the YouTube channel here. So come and ask some questions. Thank you.